great presentations for you for the rest of the day. I'm Dr. Brandy Nunes, happy to be your moderator for this session. Happy to welcome Trent Tresch here with us from the Center for Human Space Exploration. Turn it over to you. Thank you.
So much. Well, hello everybody. My name again is Trent Tresch. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the University of Arizona's Center for Human Space Exploration.
Wildcats.
Yeah, bear down, bear down. So, but before I do so, I definitely want to say thank you to the event organizers and the volunteers. You guys are amazing. I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you guys are having as much fun as I am, and the day's not even over, right? Weekend's not even over. But the Center for Human Space Exploration. So we call it CHASE for short, as you know, in the space world we like our acronyms, right? But I want to tell you a little bit about how CHASE kind of came to be. My background personally is in expedition development and operations. I would definitely say what gets me out of bed in the morning is education and exploration. I was working at my day job up in Seattle, and I got furloughed, as maybe some of you did as well during COVID. Mr. Kai Stotz actually ended up giving me a phone call and saying, hey Trent, Biosphere 2, do you remember when you came down, you checked it out, it was incredible. Do you want to actually move here and help me build Martian habitat that's fully hermetically sealed? It's going to be incredible. Are you in or out? Well, I mean, how could I say no to that, right? So I packed up my car, I left Seattle, I drove all the way down visiting as many national parks as I could, and arrived in the hottest part of the country that I think I could have found. We do love Arizona. And actually, I want to tell you a little bit about why Arizona, I think, is so special for this particular project. But when I came down working with Kai here in the blazing sun, a lot of conversations naturally came to fruition, as you could imagine, right? Coming to a conference such as this and getting to interface with such amazing people like yourselves, I feel that ideas just naturally start to flow. And so as we spent our days, day after day, for the period of 6 months, 8 months, over at SAM, which I hope you all get a chance to see in person, we had a kind of an underlying idea of, okay, we could work on this. We have SAM. Like, what else could we do? What are these other interesting projects? Well, we need something to kind of facilitate that. And one day it just clicked, and we were like, this is it. We're going to create a center of excellence here at the university, and this is what it's become. So, what's kept me around here as SAM has progressed over time is really the fantastic resources, I guess, of the University of Arizona. And many of you are probably from academic institutions and kind of probably back me up when we talk about, you know, what's accessible and available to us when you work closely with universities. But some of you may not know, Arizona is actually one of the top universities for science funding. Specifically, when you look over at the graph here, you'll notice that is in astronomy and astrophysics, right? Now, number one for almost 30 years. That's attracted, as you can imagine, where there's money, there's usually people that flock to that money and to those projects. And a lot of those projects that we see are really, really interesting. And well, at least I find them interesting, and I think you do as well. Behind me, you'll actually see near-Earth asteroid discovery by survey. A lot of these surveys are different projects that are run by different universities. And two of the projects up here behind me, the Space Watch and Catalina, are actually two U of A projects. They account for nearly half of all near-Earth asteroids that have been discovered. So when you start to think about Arizona and you start to think about this budding space economy, people are coming here. People are coming here to explore their ideas. They're coming here to be a part of projects such as this for planetary defense and many other things. Just to continue the list here for you, some of these behind me you probably recognize, like OSIRIS-REx. One that I find personally fascinating is the Gusto balloon system. But a lot of this list you'll actually notice is optics related, telescope related, looking out into space, or from satellites looking back to Earth. The University of Arizona really has incredible programs to build these systems, the engineering behind those systems. But when we were here throughout the days and we knew about all of the people that were flocking to Arizona for these resources and projects and opportunities, with the incredible access at the Biosphere 2, I mean, come on guys, this is like the most incredible architectural marvel of our generation, in my opinion. You have SAM, these ideas just kept building and building and building the layers. One of the other really fascinating, I think, buildings outside of the one that we're in right now that the university is investing in is the Applied Research Building. This is in downtown Tucson. As you can imagine, most of the university is down there, and we're a little bit of a satellite up here. But university, I think, is also recognizing just a lot of the potential that we have. And so they're putting money into what I think is incredible, a thermal vacuum chamber. The thermal vacuum chambers, especially that are large enough to put payloads in and fully test to basically space temperatures and vacuum, right, are not easy to come across. And we want to make sure that we're definitely not overlapping too much with the work that we're putting into different research projects, right? So if there is already a thermal vacuum chamber downtown, we should be able to use it, right? Clean rooms behind me, you'll see. Manufacturing facilities, just lots of opportunities. And these opportunities are actually open just not for the university, but for commercial partners, right? We've heard a lot about private-public partnerships and kind of some of the importance behind those things. So this is what has kept me in Tucson, and this is our vision. So I highlighted these buzzwords here for you, of course, but we really want to take what the university is currently to the next level and really incorporate that human space exploration component, right? And again, being surrounded with the analog work here with the biosphere and SAM, it seemed only natural for us to kind of build upon that. How are we going to do that? So our vision is multifaceted, and we're going to do our best to take it one step at a time. And we've already accomplished a few major milestones. Of course, we talk about SAM. SAM, I believe at some level, and Kai can correct me if I'm wrong, which happens a lot. With SAM, we anticipate it being just kind of one of the many pillars under the umbrella of the Center for Human Space Exploration. But then we start to think about, well, what can we do, outside of SAM? We've got a Mars yard, we've got what lets you gravity offset. All of these things are possible, and we have the space to do them. We really want to grow the chance of opportunity for everybody in this room, and maybe people that haven't really discovered this community yet, right? Because I think all of us are very, at least at this point in our careers, somewhat connected, have research projects, know where to go when you have a question, how to find the resources that you need to make something possible. But when we look at, I think, some undergrad students, we want to definitely lift them up as well in the same way that we have been lifted up. This is a little bit of a visual here of, at the university, the Space Institute, which within all of these hexagons, as you can anticipate, is, within all of these hexagons, you can see just different facets of the university, right? So there's lots of umbrellas, and there are a lot of interesting projects that are going on within these umbrellas. We've got some Inspiration 4 work here for some sensors that were used on Cyan's flight. Education, of course, as being a part of the university. But really, out of all of these, with the technology, science, engineering, I want us to focus just right down here. So we have our human habitats, our biosphere, lunar greenhouse, and SAM. Expanding that now into just the infrastructure to other experiential education opportunities, right? Growing those potentials. Now, talking about resources, resource allocation, and not doubling up on any work. Well, if we want to create something here at SAM or at Chase, we don't necessarily have to start from scratch, right? We can use each other's resources, and I think that that's valuable and something we all know, and we call collaboration. So hopefully, as I continue the talking and see some of the possibilities here, we want to talk with you. We want to create this platform for that collaboration, maybe even on a deeper level than we have currently, if that's possible. So some of the examples of collaborations we could see, as you could probably anticipate just out here. You've got the NASTAR Training Center, Florida Tech. All of these different universities have human space-related programs, whether they're human factors or human performance in extreme environments. You've got the analog side, right? I've seen some UND people here. I know Ryan used to work at started the Spacesuit Utilization of Innovative Technology Laboratory, the SUIT Lab. I would definitely say that some of these ideas for Chase as well, after having conversations with you all and people like Ryan, started to stem like what we can do here at the university, not Embry-Riddle and so on. And if we do need to create different projects and opportunities, I don't see any better people to work with. the sandbox. So of course this is kind of what we ended up calling it, right? So we have this overarching idea, we have this sandbox. Who wants to play in the sandbox? Everybody wants to come out. Let's design, let's innovate, let's develop technology, let's create operations, let's explore everything that's necessary to help us explore the stars. We were talking a little bit about SAM. We know that the fully hermetically sealed research habitat has its own pillars of research. It's also going to be open for other people, organizations, private, and so on, to come in and use the facilities for their specific for-profit, nonprofit business, you name it. I think Kai did a really good job when he explained to everybody what the SAM project was at the beginning of the conference. We just wanted to touch on it again, especially as it's such a core pillar to the Center for Human Space Exploration. Now, if we need a pool to do, I'm sorry for the image quality here, but years ago I got involved with doing some undersea analog work. This one was specifically funded by NASA through Fresno State University. We were doing basically missions for high school students, teaching them how to scuba dive, doing first robotics as well, leadership training and all of these things. But there's always this idea in the back of my head of creating something much larger and something that is maybe more impactful for not only high school students, but how about professionals? What about artists? What about really anybody that's outside of kind of the normal realm of the scientists and researchers that get access to these things? Now, with SAM, we don't have a pool, but we do know Aaron, and Aaron has a pool. So in these types of ways, we can create opportunities here and maybe potentially inspire you all as well in your parts of the world to create things that are similar, right, to where we just build upon those collaborations. And I would like to go and use Aaron's pool to build a new space habitat like this and provide those opportunities for students. Now, outside of just all of, again, the facilities that we want to be able to use, we started to think what is probably one of the most low-cost and effective ways that we can raise up other generations or each other. And many of you have probably used the NASA technical servers. Lots of useful information in there. We here at the University of Arizona have also decided to start a repository for some of the documents and things that we've worked on. So within the next couple weeks, all of you will have access to exciting projects like an Apollo 11 full-scale lunar hammer. If you would like to take these plans and go get the machine, you yourself could have a hammer as such. And we want to expand that repository into other things that we would already consider wins. So we have developed spacesuit gloves, for example, for interfacing with different fittings for the moon and Mars. Open source spacesuit gloves. Open source spacesuit wrist ring disconnects. All of these things are the things that we want to put out there so we can enable students and our greater community as you all are here. Don't forget the hard upper torso. This is actually modeled off of NASA's XEMU. Again, something that you could either print or create a mold out of and do a plaster resin and integrate that into your own spacesuit at your own institution or university or art project, you name it. Now, I think we're getting to what I think is the most exciting part as a pillar for Chase. And we wanted to create certification programs. You know, a lot of students go through school, you have your majors, you have your minors, everybody probably remembers what that process was like, and you had all of these requirements. What if we take a step back for a second, and we just think about smaller tidbits of information that we can provide to students that could be impactful outside of a traditional track? How about spacecraft egress training? How about spacecraft egress training for $400? Let's make things accessible like a CPR training class. Let's make it as straightforward as a CPR training class. I think maybe all of us can digest that when you're going to space, as I'm sure many of you in this room will, you're going to be trained specifically to the spacecraft that you're flying. But what about taking training and going to a tech school? Who's going to build all of these things in space for us? Who's going to build all these space hotels? Well, we're going to need welders. We're going to need people with trade skills. They're also going to have these types of really other skill sets that are applicable to space, spacecraft egress training. I brought some other goods here to show you guys just where our head is at. Skydiving. Who here goes skydiving? Any skydivers? People who have been skydiving before? Yeah, okay, so a few of us are brave enough to jump out of the airplanes. But a lot, believe it or not, in order for you to understand and digest how to properly pilot a canopy or to pull a ripcord, land in water, for example, These are things that can be taught to you in about a day. Will you be an absolute professional? Well, no, you don't have your 10,000 hours. But you have enough information that if you were in an emergency situation, that you could figure out what you needed to do to get down and survive safely. So again, let's take these smaller tidbits of information, let's compress them, let's digest them, and let's help all types of students. Again, this isn't even just limited to the University of Arizona, which I think is the greatest part. Any professional that wants to get a professional certificate like this, that maybe has been a forklift driver, right, can come in and kind of dip their feet into what space is like, whether they want to do Mode 8 egress, which again is like the skydiving version of shuttle astronauts. Do they want to learn spacesuit certification training program? That can be done in about 2 days. How about high-altitude oxygen systems? Where do you go to learn about high-altitude oxygen systems? I wanted to bring a lot of this stuff as well to show you guys that we're moving forward, and it's exciting, and it's incredible to see, technology that used to look like this, big and bulky, now just fits on the palm of your hand. These are pressure demand regulators. So these are all oxygen safe regulators that will basically keep you alive up to altitudes that are necessary basically right before spacesuits. So we're trying to fill in those gaps, and we want to provide more opportunities. Certifications. Now, we're talking about other wins. We have this idea of other special projects. And again, I think on some level this is nothing new for you all. I think that, again, working together and collaborating, universities, private, public, you know that naturally these things start to come up. But we have been fortunate to work on spacesuit skydiving standards with the U.S. Parachute Association. As we start to see more and more people want to do those types of things that aren't really fully research-based. Of course, there are research projects that are applicable to those things, but a lot of people also want to get into space recreationally. People want to jump from 60,000 feet. They want to jump from 140,000 feet. And we see, again, in this bubbling space economy, these opportunities that are coming up. So does this person need to be an aerospace engineer? No, they don't. Do they need to be a full-on skydiver? Well, that's actually up for debate. We can talk about that later if you'd like, but I've been lucky enough to chat with Alan Eustace, the current world record holder, and he actually has stated that a lot of what's intuitive about skydiving naturally and recreationally, from what people will do, and those of you have done, is completely opposite from the skill set that you need to jump from space in a spacesuit. Just fascinating. What other opportunities as far as special projects go? Last year we got to lead a deep sea submarine expedition. We logged over 50 hours at depth and accomplished some of our, many of our scientific research objectives. But we started to think and started to talk about submarine organizations, right? We know about underwater analogs, as we've seen earlier in one of the presentations. What about taking it to the next step? How about integrating Earth-based exploration and marine science with space analogs, right? Kai and I, as well recently, have been fortunate to work with a university capstone student, NASA-funded program through the XHAB, did a redesign of NASA's TC-TSAC, which is a CO2 sequestration module for the International Space Station, looking at swing bed systems. How can we, again, keep our systems working longer in space more efficiently, right? So special projects, they keep popping up, and the more and more opportunities that come up, really the more doors that seem to open, right? And the more things that we can house either under the Center for Human Space Exploration or start to explore under that. And I will also touch, because I've been working a little bit in the space economy and a lot of things that we're seeing, and a difficulty for a lot of people is gaining funds. Also, when you're trying to run a for-profit business in space, some of you are probably more well-versed than I, but from what I've been reading and from what I've been working on with different organizations, is that getting attached to a lot of that funding can be fairly difficult, and then sometimes in the end, who's your end user in space? Well, guess what? It's usually the government. Is that fully commercial space if the government is just paying contracts to you to do something for them? Well, let's start to think again about recreational opportunities. Now, I think probably the most exciting part about all of this, through the center and just being located here in Tucson, Arizona, we do have an economy of some of the probably most well-known space companies and aerospace companies. Two that I would definitely like to highlight would be the Paragon Space Development Corporation, who we got in here, whoop whoop. So Paragon's absolutely incredible, and maybe a handful of you do know that it actually did get its start here at the biosphere too, from some of the original biospherians. who then also went on to do Worldview, right? And this is the photo behind me of balloons to space, zero pressure balloons, polyethylene balloons to space. We're looking at altitudes of 100 to 130,000 feet. Now, if you've seen recently, Worldview has actually released that they're trying to fly. I think they actually just logged over 1,000 people in pre-orders for their flights. Again, very much so recreational, but I can bet you right now that there are a lot of scientific research projects that are going along with that as well. $50,000 a person. Some people drive a truck that costs more than $50,000. Within our generation, within our lifetime, within the next couple of years, we will be able to jump on a balloon, and I only believe that the cost will start to go down. Now, there obviously is some discrepancies, and I think that people would argue a little bit about some of those specifics. Space Perspective is charging about double that to actually go to space, so we'll see what the economics look like as time unfolds, but I think that's only natural. But lastly, I do want to show you this photo here. It's kind of hard to make out, but this is actually a MiG-29, a Russian-built fixed-wing aircraft, flying to near space altitudes. So this is about 65,000 feet right above the Armstrong line. So here the pressures basically drop to near vacuum, right? You're above, I believe it's about 98% of the atmosphere, but it sounds better when you say 99% of the atmosphere, so we're going to go with that. And we see the curvature of the Earth. We see the thin blue atmosphere around our planet, and we see the blackness of space during the day. We want to be able to provide these opportunities. We have companies here in Arizona that have fixed-wing aircraft that are run commercially, actually one of the largest private air forces in the world. Some of it will be run here out of Arizona. I actually need to find Cyan because I want to use Jared's MiG-29. So pass that along if you can. If everybody pulls her arm for me, then maybe you know it'll actually happen. But we can actually do these flights for science and recreation at around $25,000 to $30,000 a person. So again, not a fully accessible price point for a lot of people, but I would say so. I would say that as far as our certification programs go, starting at around, and really mostly sticking around $400 a person for these entry-level courses, $30,000 for a flight to space with the opportunity to maybe share the overview effect, maybe provide research opportunities. We're already seeing these prices come down. The more prices come down, the more that we're going to see accessibility, the more of us are going to get to see incredible views like this. And so I leave you today, hopefully with a little bit better of an idea of what the Center for Human Space Exploration is trying to be, what it already is and hopes to become. We, of course, are starting building something off of the people who've come before us, which we're incredibly grateful for. And hopefully we can move the bar a little bit higher so those who come after us can continue the progress. Thank you.
A little bit of time for Q&A. Anyone has any questions? You can.
Hi, Trent. I'm Ethan Atwell with spacefortrades.org. I was very excited to hear many of the things you were talking about early on in your talk. Specifically, the applied research building. Given the word applied was in there, immediately caught my attention, given that skilled trades are the application of STEM. Also providing goods and services throughout the world. So my question being is this is connected with University of Arizona. Do you have any frameworks in place for inclusion of CTE students or tradespeople that are working in the field with experience to participate in this, or is that a thought yet?
No, definitely. I would say that that's probably one of I mean, in Southern Arizona, there are a handful of community colleges. There are a lot of trade schools. There are, I mean, even high schools. There's no reason, especially with a lot of, I mean, some of these programs and you know, this gear that you see out here, whether it's parachute rigs or suits or what have you, what's great is that those things are transportable, right? We can go down to Tucson. We can use the Tucson pool facilities if we need to do some work down there. We can go to some of these community colleges. We're actually trying to work with NSS right now on gaining grants. Arizona also has the Space Grant Consortium, I believe, working to make sure that whether you've got low-income students, high school students, again, a lot of these courses will be tailored specifically to those age ranges, but that, yes, we definitely want to make sure that trade schools and CT and everybody is involved in this possibility, right? And I think sometimes that we do see a limitation here, and I know that a lot of us talk about like equity and diversity within space, but I think I want to make sure that those students don't get left behind, right?
Very cool presentation in addition to the spacesuit that you had yesterday.
Thanks.
So can you briefly describe what you have in front of us?
Yeah,
It's really cool.
yeah, I would love to do that for you guys. So just right in front of me right here, this is actually a skydiving canopy. So this is built by a company called Squirrel. This is actually for wingsuiting. I'm sure you guys have all seen the squirrel people jumping out of airplanes and doing crazy stuff. So that's what this canopy is actually built for. In order to do a lot of our training, you don't really need anything special, because the idea of the training is if you land in water, how do you escape without becoming entangled? So we can use any type of system for that. This is the actual container system for this rig here. Something that kind of keeps my brain juices flowing throughout the day when I'm sitting at my desk are, my jars of trusty lunar regolith and Martian regolith simulant. So, what are the possibilities here? Who's done a room yet that's just full of this stuff? A hermetically sealed room that is filled with these tiny particles. I think we could learn a lot by actually trying to create, again, just more opportunities. So again, juice is flowing. Over here, we have a MBU-20P mask. So this is the type of oxygen mask system that's used throughout like our Navy and our Air Force. Also used by Alan Eustace on his high altitude jump from space. Has built-in O2 microphones. But in order to use that, you need actually one of these regulators. So I was pointing to this old A14 earlier. A14s are actually an incredible regulator built in the early 1940s, still used today. So a lot of glider pilots will actually use these regulators if they want to do flights like above really 12,000 feet. So if there are any pilots in the room, basically, well, you know this, so I guess for those of you who are not pilots, but once you fly above a certain altitude for a certain period of time, you're required to don oxygen. That can be just a little nose cannula, but the higher and higher you get, you need to have demand regulators. You need to be able to breathe in, again, on demand. And then at another point, even higher altitudes, you actually have to have a pressure demand regulator, and you have to actually force that oxygen into your lungs so your body can absorb it properly. So that's what a lot of these are here, these regulators. Two of my most favorite, and I would say that the newest versions of all of these things are the Crew 79 regulators. So these were probably used in the 90s and early 2000s. Now Cobham is a company that has created new systems, and because they like those government military contracts and have to keep creating new things and charge an exorbitant amount for them. But this, again, you can basically breathe on this oxygen regulator up until you need this spacesuit. One of my other favorite ones, talking about special projects, right now we're working on a high-altitude hot air balloon flight project. So everybody in that hot air balloon flight is going to have what's called an Aerox 8. Aerox 8s are diluter demand, so they're going to dilute that air with oxygen until you get to a certain altitude, and then it'll supply you with 100% oxygen. So to me, I like to geek out on all this stuff, and I just thought I would bring it as well to get to share with you guys. We'll put it in the back so you can kind of poke around. I just ask that you be careful when you look at it.
Thank you so much. We're out of time.